we need to do is a health sound check, because it's very important for the sound quality of this podcast that we do a sound check. So can you initiate the sound check, please?
I already have. I've already got your supercilious and condescending parody of me on record. Hello and welcome to episode 335 of the Crate and Crowbar, a PC gaming podcast recorded on the 6th of August 2020. I'm Marsh Davis. I'm joined this evening by Tom Francis.
Hello.
And Alex Wiltshire.
Hello.
Alex, I believe you have some news for us.
I wouldn't call this news, but it's good though. So I did see, and it's quite likely that most of our listeners will also have seen this, but it was just so good. Earlier this week, Dana Schwartz, a writer of TV, books and comics, and of podcasts. Does one write a podcast? Perhaps good podcasters do. Noticed someone on Reddit pointing out that an author by the name of John Boyne, who's written quite a serious science fiction book called The Traveller at the Gates of Wisdom, and wrote a passage in it in which one of his characters cooked something with Zelda Breath of the Wild ingredients.
They were making red dye, weren't they?
Oh, that's what it was. A dye, was it? Oh, that's right. The dyes are used in my dressmaking with composed of various ingredients. Nightshade, okay. Sapphire, it's a mineral, but okay. Keystwing, the leaves of the silent princess plant. Oxarock eyeball. And then it's like, oh, right, okay. Hightail wizard. And then it finished it off. This is almost like as if it was planned, because it's like the punchline, and 4 Hylian shrooms. It's like, yeah. Everyone was laughing at him, and to his great credit, his response was, John Boyne's response was, "Lol, that is actually kind of hilarious. I'm totally willing to own it. Something tells me that I'm telling this anecdote on stage for many years to come." Crying, laughing emoji. So yeah,
did you see that an Irish newspaper that reviewed his book had tried to give him even more credit than he deserves, and tried to read this as, they said something to the effect of like, Boyne's is not restricted by simple historical recreation, using ingredients from Legend of Zelda in one of the recipes, and then cites another bunch of like anachronisms where things from other time periods were used that didn't make any sense, as if it was like a really bold artistic choice to do this. No, he just Googled the recipe. And if you Google like red dye ingredients, that the top result is from Zelda, and it's that list of stuff.
It's so good. Yeah, take that, the world, from games. I just wonder why. I mean, wouldn't you just wonder what those things are? It's like,
yeah, I mean, they don't sound real.
Yeah. Where is Hylia? Maybe you looked that up too and thought, oh, okay, fair enough.
I think for me, the red flag would be the eyeball. Like, the what eyeball? Do you not Google? Are you not just curious for your own reasons? Like, what kind of eyeball is this? That's red?
Well, I mean, for a long time, red dye was made out of crushed beetles. So, I mean, it's not that. I mean, no, okay, it is completely indefensible. Yeah.
Let's leave the news there.
Just leave the news there. What have you been playing, Alex?
Oh Lord. Okay. Well, I've been playing a game that Tom has also been playing, but maybe I'll mention that at the end, and then Tom and I can go into that. So I'll first talk about Grounded, Obsidian's new game, where you are very small. It's a surprise that, like, I hadn't really taken on board what kind of a game it is. I downloaded it thinking, oh, people are talking about it, and I like the screenshots. I didn't really realize that it was a survival game. It's an online survival game, like all of the games, well, quite a lot of the games. Which I was sort of like, oh, I thought it'd be, Obsidian, story and whatnot, RPG. But no, this is a survival game in which you are a sort of a young teenager who has found themselves. Well, it's an early access game, so in fact you find yourself just playing without any real understanding of why you're there or how you got to be very small in someone's backyard, and you just abruptly start, having chosen your avatar, sort of on this sort of muddy path beneath the shelter of a lot of blades of grass and leaves and whatnot. I haven't played an awful lot of it, but I've really enjoyed what I've played so far. I've only played on my own, but and I'm not all that hot on survival games. I find them a bit stressful and getting in the way of what I like about what it could be, which is being able to freely walk about and explore and things. I get annoyed with getting hungry and things. But there's something about the setting, and I'm sure there's other things going on as well that make me like it. But what's obvious is that the fact that it's just the scale is just fascinating. Like I was really, I loved Honey, I Shrunk the Kids when I was little. Like, I think there's something to that fantasy of being really small in a familiar environment, and seeing these sort of wondrous things that you either don't notice or you take for granted at a totally different scale. Playing a game like that that looks so good. It was really, I just really, really enjoyed it. One of the early things that I sort of came face to face with ants, and these ants behave in such an ant-like manner. They kind of scuttle. I think there's something quite good about the choice of setting for a game like this, because like insects are weird in the way that they move, and they're quite mechanical seeming, which fits quite nicely with the way games do animal, movements. They can kind of flock and wander around and things, and it kind of looks fairly sort of ant-like anyway. But they're kind of, there seems to be quite a lot more going on with the ants. They kind of seem to show curiosity. They come up to you and investigate you a little bit. They also sort of move together a lot. They'll go in lines, or they're obviously social in the way that their behavior is programmed. And they just look good. Like it's using Unreal Engine, and therefore it looks just nice. Like materials look very shiny and physical and tangible. So that was a really sort of early, nice little thing I noticed. The fact that you can also so this is a game in which being Obsidian, they've put quite a lot of storyline into it. So not far from the point that you start the game, you'll stumble across this great big weird science device which isn't working properly. It's got like a circuit board inside it, and you can get inside through a hole in the side of this thing. And there's obviously a problem with it, and little tooltips telling you what to do roughly. Investigate the thing, and before long, basically there are these, you manage to switch it on by pressing these big buttons on the top of it, and lasers start firing into points on this thing, and two of these lasers aren't working properly. And then this is a point at which you follow the laser back, and you can see with a depth of field effect, these apparatus, huge to you, great big apparatuses, standing a little bit further away in the distance, far, far, far above you, above the level of the grass and the other bits of vegetation that you're under. And, you have landmarks to go for, which are really naturalized because you're really small and they're really big, and you just walk towards them. Later on, there's an even bigger landmark that you'll make your way to, and it was a way of navigating that was incredibly made huge amounts of sense, felt really naturalistic, and that was just a really nice thing that was afforded by the scale. Another nice thing about it is that that there is a thirst system in it as well as a hunger one. And the thirst system, there are these pools of water all over the place, but it's muddy, and when you go over them, the kind of like the prompt comes up and it says drink it with kind of an ellipsis after it, and to suggest that maybe you shouldn't, because if you do, your character remarks, I suppose I need the water. The least I'll get is botulism, and indeed your health ticks down when you drink this dirty water. So for a while I was wondering, how do you find clean water? And luckily the kind of rudimentary tutorial that's going on points it out, and you get it from dew, and you look up, and some blades of grass have droplets of water on hanging from the top of them, and then you figure out, well, I'll just chop down the grass with my crafted axe, which you do. Like the first strike, the droplet falls down, and then its surface tension sort of keeps it in a globule of water, and it bounces down a hill, and you're kind of running after it, and it's just. Did not foresee that being part of the survival system, but I'll take it. I'll definitely take that.
Yeah. I'm really curious about how you get a disease from dirty water when the size differential is like that. Like, do you get the same disease you would if you drank it as a full-size human, or like if you're small enough, the disease would be like out of scale with your body, and I feel like it wouldn't fit.
Well, maybe it does even more damage. It's actually sort of the same size. You can see.
I'm sorry, you've got big virus.
Big botulism. The other thing, like the enemies are things like soldier ants. So I've been down into an ant burrow and been attacked by red ants which are larger than the ones you just generally see wandering around, that sort of seem curious and friendly. These ones are larger, and their eyes glow and they come after you. I've died to them a few times. I've also died to spiders, and the spiders are basically, there's been a lot, people are scared of spiders. This game has an arachnophobia safe mode. And when so in the settings, there's a slider for how scary the spiders are. And they start basically when it all the way to the left, it's full spider, but after you start twinking it, the legs are the first thing to go, so you're left with just the legless body hovering terrifyingly on the ground.
Is that better?
Yeah, it seems worse in some ways. Now the spiders can fly.
People do talk about the legs being a definite downer, but if you just keep sliding it, it starts losing its texture, so you don't get the glossy texture, but you still get the the eyes are still there. Keep going further, you end up with basically like a blob, a floating blob, a floating grey sort of blob that doesn't shine.
This does raise a very cursed question, which is like, what is the opposite of a spider? If the spider slider is all the way to the other end, what should you get? I feel like a lemon. Just a nice, glossy, shiny, full-size lemon rolling around on the ground.
Jumping at you and killing you in just a couple of lemony bites.
Lemony nudges.
Lemony nudges.
A series of unfortunate nudges.
What if you're phobic of lemons and spiders? There's really nowhere for you to go.
You've got to put it exactly in the middle.
But then
half
you get
lemon,
the worst.
Half spider.
Yeah, that's the worst. Oh my God.
Just a lemon with spider legs. And both are glossy.
Despite, I'm not really afraid of spiders IRL, but these ones they are horrible. They come after you. They really, really do hunt you down as well. And I've died to them quite a few times. But yeah, like it's really promising. Marty, am I right that you've played a little bit on the line?
Yeah, I did play a bit with a friend of podcast, Jim Rossignol. I have to say, I liked a lot about it, but I have uninstalled it. I don't want to ever play a game with crafting in it ever again, is my feeling. And
that's a lot of games.
I don't know. Yeah, but it's also a particular type of crafting game where really what you have to do is Alt-Tab and Google and then figure out what you need to do. And then
I think a lot of it's UI problem. Because I mean, I haven't had any problems with the crafting. I mean, I haven't had to alt tab. The information has been there, but it took me such a long time to figure out that you've got one set of crafting things on one tab, and then you've got to go across to another one to do another one. So you'll go to one tab and then realize, then it's saying, oh, you need such and such and such. That is on another tab, so you've got to tab over to that one. I don't know. There's an element of just needless work and needless obfuscation there. I feel why not? If you've got the ingredients, just do it. As much as Minecraft does do it better in the way that the crafting table is well, I suppose this does have a crafting table in it.
It needs another slider for me, so you can slide.
Turn
What's
it
the opposite
down.
of crafting?
Having a butler come along and just give you everything you want.
The craft butler, craft services. That slider idea doesn't seem actually unfeasible. The crafting complexity just you could just mark certain steps of it as rather than having to craft A to get B to get C, you just go from straight A to C.
Yeah, I think, but the thing is, in these sorts of games, the crafting system is everything that drives you through the world, and you realize that there isn't an awful lot to motivate you to do a huge amount if you didn't have the will to kind of find stuff. I mean, this one does have story. There is a location I went to in which I had a conversation with a robot called Burgle the robot, an amusing robot. And it's Obsidian, and there was multiple choicey bits and things. So they're definitely leaning on story than most crafting survivally games. So maybe there's a slider between story and crafting, and you can kind of your motivation goes from having an amusing anecdotes by a robot to making stuff out of leaves.
I want to be narratively coddled by a lemon. That's all I want from games.
The thing I was going to say was the opposite of story is also a lemon.
Yeah, I mean, it's really early days though. It's quite rough. I believe actually. I mean, I believe that it's quite. I mean, did you find it a bit of a faff to join Jim online?
Yeah. The matchmaking stuff isn't finessed yet. Let's say.
Yeah, and that's true for a lot of it. But it's got nice ants in it, so I'll give it 10 out of 10.
Yeah, really good ants. I've got to say, all the ways that they've made lower insect life cute is quite impressive.
Yeah,
I think there's there's some kind of dirt mite or something quite unglamorous.
Yeah,
but they make they scamper around. They look they're adorable.
Fluffy. They're all fluffy.
Yeah, make cute little noises, squirkly noises.
Then you kill it and you make a hat out of its carapace.
Yeah, there is that.
Is it in some of the screenshots and stuff I've seen, at times it looks kind of a little bit ugly because a nice grass lawn looks nice from our perspective, but once you get down to it, it's basically mud with some really separated blades. And I was curious if that's how it looks all the time, or if it has pretty stuff as well.
More or less. Yes, you've got muddy ground all the time, pretty much, and then with the odd sort of sporadic little green leaf poking through, which you can pick up. My impression playing it, I wasn't really focusing on it because there's so much going on. There is a density to the stuff around you, which you don't normally get in survival games. Most survival games, they'll have forest areas, but a lot of the time you're in plains areas and with mountains in the distance and things, and walking from place to place usually isn't that feature filled. But in this one, you're constantly in this sort of forest environment effectively, which does change as well. And you'll come across these huge landmarks, which are drinks bottles, a kind of mince packet, like a little plastic mince box that you can get open, and then you can craft something to chip away at the mince to eat it.
How did you open it?
I hit it It's got a plastic.
Right.
It's got a plastic
Video
lid, and I
games.
just hit it. It is sort of like sprung open, but then I need a better hammery tool to actually chip away the hard diamantine mint inside. I got inside a can, and my character remarked on, "I've always wondered what would be like to go inside a can," and I thought, yeah. Do you know what? I think I have as well.
One of life's big mysteries.
Guess what? It's kind of like what it looks like when you look inside a can, but bigger.
Yeah, that's what I would have expected.
Oh. The other game I played was 1,000 Threads, which you've been playing as well, haven't you, Tom?
Yeah, I answered that question before you asked it.
And it's like it's made by one person. It's I don't know, how would you describe it? An open world letter delivering game with lots of relationships in it, but kind of experimental, but also quite simplistic.
It has the look of a almost like a Proteus type game, like a very lo-fi, flat shaded open world that is very you're in nature. You know, the sound of birds is constant, and it feels nice to walk around, and sort of you feel like you're out in the wilderness. But then, strangely, it's about dealing with like 50 to 100 different people all named, and it's obviously generating some aspects of the quests they give you and the relationships they have. Like a typical quest is something like you ask someone how they are, and they say, "Oh, I'm a bit shaken up because yesterday I was attacked on the road by Jim Francis."
Or Felton Serrano.
Yeah, and then you go and they say you can offer in that situation when someone has a grudge against someone, the job is always, can you go and knock them unconscious? that will solve it, I think. If you just knock them unconscious and then leave them alone and they'll get back up, like therefore it's settled. So if someone's been robbed, you get a job to go and knock that guy unconscious, but you don't know where that person is, and so you go and ask other people where they are. And every time you talk to anybody, you can ask them about anybody else. And there's this huge menu of how you can do that, filtered by people you have jobs about, or people who like you, or people who you've seen recently. And then you slowly you kind of narrow down where they are, and then you find them, and then I guess you knock them unconscious. But when you do, obviously that they will hate you. People that have relations to each other, so they can, their mum is probably in this world. If their mum sees you beat them unconscious for no reason that she can understand, then she'll hate you.
I have wondered how much the names are generated. The world appears to be authored, fixed, but I did wonder whether the names and the general relationships are generated. There was a guy who very early on was kind of like a crook called Felton Serrano in mine, and he was like, everybody hated him, so I was asked to punch him up quite a few times. And I think so I did. Later on I met his mum and dad, and his dad, when I interacted with the dad, there was just like a sound clip of him going "oh" at me, as if he was really angry with me. But the dialogue I then had with him kind of didn't reflect that at all. So it was which is a shame, because there's a real promise in the dynamic nature of these relationships that it's kind of starting to present to you.
Yeah, like I had this similar thing where I talk to someone and they're like growled, said, "Oh, you're the last person I want to talk to," and then I asked them how they are, and they said, "Oh, I'm fine, thanks. Thank you for asking." And I did. That was the first time that this generated relationships or systems-based relationships thing started to add something to the game for me. Was that I've been getting all these bitty jobs to okay, this person, find out who robbed this person. Please deliver this toothbrush to my daughter. Go and get me 10 wood and that kind of stuff. And they're all just kind of one-offs. Didn't really relate to anything. Nothing was coming together. But then I got a mission to, I think, beat up Roberta Sanders. And then I got another mission say, oh, I was robbed by Roberta Sanders. Can you go and get my items back? And then I found someone else who said, I was robbed by Roberta Sanders. Can you go and get my items back? And then somebody else said, I just hate Roberta Sanders. Can you beat up Roberta Sanders? And I started to realize, oh, this is a thief. This person actually, like, as a career steals stuff. And that is why so many people have a grudge against her. And that actually means something. Like, that was a cool moment of realizing, like, oh, something actually is happening here. This person is different to other people. Like, not everybody just randomly steals. There is kind of like a thief archetype, and they're gonna mug people. And then, and also, it's kind of cool from a just as a player to realize, like, oh, I can collect all these quests at once. So I just got to take out one person, and I get all of this. And then I think actually when I found Roberta Sanders, she was attempting to mug me. So I was like, well, this is a morally easy decision. I was an idiot though, because I did. I thought I was being clever. I think it might not have been Roberta Sanders. Some other thief I was tracking. When I found them, they were in the process of mugging somebody else, and I knocked them unconscious, and then I got a reward for helping that person who was in trouble right then and there. Then I also got to take the possessions back that this person had stolen. And then I just kind of forgot what had just happened. And I was just looking at this person thinking, oh, it'd be really kind of like neat and cunning if I took stuff off them, like stole their stuff. But then there's an option to heal them as well. And I thought, I bet if I heal them, they'll like me. And I did heal them, and they did. It does tell you their disposition's gone up, but I forgot that right before this, the reason they're unconscious is I just slung rocks at their head until they passed out. And it turns out they had not forgiven me for that.
Yeah, I have wondered. There's a little smiley face, isn't there? There's they have like a description, demeanors descriptions, like it's all 2 or 3 words that you'll see above their names in there, because each person has like a page, don't they? So you see their relationships to other people, these descriptors, their opinion of you, and like a picture of them. I really. I think that there's this is made by one person over the course of quite a while. So like, I can totally forgive that it doesn't have that laser focus on being this open world relationships game. But I would love that. Like if it was just a little bit further built out, that meaning, there was a bit more dialogue, a little less boilerplate stuff. And what did you think of the writing in general in terms of the dialogue and that kind of thing?
It's very disparate. There is some of it is incredibly generic, and then once you find the mailbag and you can deliver letters to people, you can open those letters, and you basically might as well. There doesn't seem to be any drawback to doing so, and if you don't, you just miss out on content. And those letters are all handwritten and very obviously handwritten. Like manually authored, not generated, and not boilerplate. And each one is completely unique. And they describe these much more sophisticated relationships between these people than you've ever seen actually happening in the world. And it's nice in some ways because it's sort of, I guess you've checked that box, and so you've suggested that these relationships are going on. But on the other hand, it couldn't clash more with what you actually see when you talk to those people. Like I read this really kind of. I thought actually the writing of these letters was pretty good at times. There was one about someone who's obviously just had a single spent a single evening with somebody who they really like, and they're trying to tell them that in the letter. And if they actually read more like answer phone messages, where they leave one that's kind of comes on a bit too strong, and then they send another one to follow up and say, "Oh no, actually, sorry, forget that one." And then a third one to say, "Actually, disregard all my previous letters. I'm sorry, just forget it." And that was all quite convincing. But then I went and talked to that very person, and I asked them about the person they've been talking to, and they just said some generic line about, "Oh, they give gifts a lot. I wonder where they get those gifts." I feel like if you can't back it up with anything else, then it's I don't know. It almost does as much harm as good. Yeah. And the thing I eventually came to, because I've explored almost all of it now, and it's got quite a surprisingly robust like progression system where you can't access a certain place till you upgrade your pickaxe, and you can't upgrade your pickaxe till you find a certain kind of mushroom, and then you've got to get to a place where that mushroom grows, and all the money you're getting for these dynamically generated jobs, you can sink into getting crafting recipes and upgrade stuff. Again, it's an aspect that like a sort of lofty artistic or experimental dynamic narrative game usually doesn't bother with, because that's not the focus. But it gives it a good structure, and it actually pretty much plays out like a a fixed length indie game. I've spent about 5 hours in it, and I've seen all the places now, and I want to be done with it. I'm not. It hasn't given me a good getting off point, and I can tell there probably is some way to end it ultimately, but it seems to me like it would just be a shitload of repeating these quests I've seen them all now. And since the value of it, I think, is finite and fixed, I don't really see why it needed this dynamic generating quest. I kind of think if each of these quest types only came up once, and they specifically attach them to, if it's a quest about being mugged, then the person is always one of the few thieves in the world, and put some logic into that, then they wouldn't. And also the rewards, were 10 times the value that they currently are, and you just had 10 times fewer quests, and each one was unique. There seems to be enough different types that you could pretty much get away with that, and it would be maybe a shorter game with less individual quests. But as it is, the quests are so that in number they are so overwhelming. Every single person has something for you to do, and it's just a throwaway generated thing of just go here, do that, and you spot the pattern really fast. And the dialogue will be both repeated from the other time you got this quest, and also incredibly specific. So you can't even buy into it as like it's just a sort of general line that indicates a more specific dialogue. It'll be a really specific dialogue with the sort of idioms and unique phrasing, and then someone else completely unrelated in a different part of the world will say the exact same thing to you. I don't really feel like they needed that. They didn't need this crazy number of quests. They could have just had fewer, made them unique, and had it be just a fixed length thing.
Yeah. I thought it was also quite interesting that the later areas in the game aren't anything like as densely populated as the first couple of areas you're in. The first area is it reminded me a bit of Far Cry Primal, because it's also in a forest, and it's ram filled with people. So it's this kind of incredibly kind of, unspoilt wildernessy sort of setting in theory, except for it's filled with people and they're wandering around and there's so much to do. There are animals as well. There are wolves and whatnot, and rabbits and stuff, which you can hunt and things. But I thought it was interesting that the later areas are much more sparsely populated. If the early parts of the game were as sparsely populated, there would be fewer. It would play out exactly as and I agree with you, like the way that you kind of talked about, and that it probably would be a make for a better experience. Like, I mean, I'm kind of grumbling about it a bit, but I really enjoyed it, and I played it in 2 sessions, played it for about the same length of time as you, Tom, and like it's such a relaxing game. There's something about the atmosphere that it has, which is as you said, that it's this sort of bird song and kind of gentle wind and general atmospheric effects, sporadic music, which is really gentle as well, really lovely music actually, and the visuals, these flat colors, some beautiful vistas. It has a really good line in what's the name of the thing where you kind of the successively further away mountains, the tone of them becomes paler and paler, and so you get this sort of effect of kind of nearby mountains being darker than the ones behind. There's a name of that, and it has that, and it is nice. I took a lot of screenshots.
I don't know the name, but yeah, it is pretty.
And that just really pulled me through it.
It doesn't have fast travel, and it's not a huge open world, but any open world where you're just walking and you can't do anything else is kind of intensive. So the way I played it was I went to my kitchen drawer and I found a tiny metal spoon, which I think is for measuring like sugar or sweetener or something, like a really tiny one. And then I rested that on my W key, and then I placed my phone on top of that to give it some weight. And then I played on gamepad, so I could have the keyboard driving my forward motion, and then use the gamepad to steer myself around. Because just like I get that there's an artistic ambition in like, oh, we don't want you to just skip or teleport around this world. We want you to appreciate the distances involved and get a sense for it as a real place. And that's all well and good. But at some point, my finger just really hurts from pushing forwards. Like the other thing I've been playing is an open world game. So I'm just pushing the left stick forwards for 3 hours at a time. And at some point, I just can't play because my finger hurts too much. So if you're going to do that, just give me an auto run button.
Yeah. The
How did you?
I have found closure with it. I haven't finished it, but I discovered somewhere in one of the final areas where there is a location and a story, like a different kind of story, a completely different kind of story, became apparent there, and I made the journey that resulted of that, and I thought, yep, I can finish there. Particularly as I'd noticed also in the achievements list, there was an achievement for, and I can't remember what the number is now, like, but for something like 500 letters to be delivered or something incredibly. No, I'm not doing that. Okay, if that's where we're going with this, that's where I'm going to leave it here. But I do feel closure. I did that. It was different, and I can go.
What did you think about the backstory vendor?
Right. Yeah. So as you're walking around the environments, there are these ruins that hint towards history to this place, and you'll also find chests, and inside the chests there are these artifacts, and sometimes you pick up fossils, and sooner or later you will find something to do with all that, in which you'll exchange those things for backstory, and the backstory. The makers thought quite a lot about kind of what a backstory for this area is, but the tone is completely different to the tone you get from the characters. The characters talk like 21st century sort of people, Westerners living in a wood. But the backstory suggests that this land has much more mystery and a strange history, which nothing in the world that you exist in really reflects. That's what I thought, anyway.
Yeah, it was. I liked the sort of vibe of the backstory. It's sort of in some ways post-apocalyptic, but doesn't feel like it. And I haven't found a huge number of artifacts. So I think maybe it's best this way because you just get little snippets of information that obviously connect to other things that you don't know yet. And I kind of like that, where you just sort of think, oh, there's these gates, and then I found out what the title means. There's a reference to that, and I got that
okay.
nugget of lore.
Oh, you have to tell me that afterwards. Yeah.
It's not terribly enlightening. It's just a sort of a metaphor thing, and so just the sense that there is more to discover there is nice. But yeah, it doesn't feel like these people actually belong to that world, or this society that exists now actually did come from these other ones that existed before, which is weird because you'd think. I mean, we've basically identified 3 different styles of writing in this that all seem to clash with each other, and that's the exact kind of thing you expect not to be an issue when one person did it all.
Yeah, and the sheer number of things that are going on at any time. So you've got there's a hunting system, there's a crafting system, there's the dialogue system, there's the relationship systems, there's just the world development, there's the story stuff. There's so much going on. I get the feeling that in towards the back end of year 2. Oh, I want to really do a deep lore to this because there's something missing, and it all just got built in these different chunks. But I think for one person to make this, I think despite the fact that we've talked about things seeming so disparate, the actual experience that I had playing it actually felt I really enjoyed it. It was really that relaxing sense that I was talking about earlier.
Yeah, just get yourself a small metal spoon and sit back and relax.
Marty.
Have you been playing anything else, Marty?
I've been playing the Master Chief Collection.
Oh.
I partly inspired by the Halo Infinite trailer.
How many Master Chiefs did you get in the collection?
Oh, there's a whole bunch. There's loads of Master Chiefs. All the chiefs
Masters
that one can have. Master's Chief. But I have to say, straight up, Halo 3 is still a fucking great shooter. But I have to say, the Master Chief Collection has sort of made me want to walk back a little bit of my Halo Infinite apologia from last week. Because while I still think that game looks perfectly lovely and the reaction to it is somewhat confected by internet anger merchants, my experience of simply installing the Master Chief Collection has made me wonder if 343 Industries are actually just straight up insane, like properly bunny boiling, howling at the moon, completely mad. So the Master Chief Collection is, for people who aren't familiar, a repackaging of many previously released Halo games. Many of them are not made by 343 Industries, who are the sort of current chaperones of the franchise. Most of them are by Bungie. And some of these games have been... Bungie. Oh my God, this is where the podcast is going. A lot of these games have been remastered by 343 Industries with somewhat dubious aesthetic choices, but the originals are also playable in the package too, with several games. Like I think ODST is coming out later this month, and it's going to be added to the package retrospectively, and then I guess Halo 4 or whatever. But when you buy it on Steam and install it, it downloads 35 gigabytes, but the 35 gigabytes doesn't contain any games. It downloads 35 gigabytes of something, but what? It cannot be said. It cannot be uttered. To merely imagine the contents of this data stream is to throw oneself fully into the abyssal unknown. So what you do is you open the game and you go through these menus. You start it up. You navigate through the menus to the part that you want to play, and you hit play, and you're told you can't because you haven't downloaded that. Which is just a UI flow that truly fucking unravels the mind. Like, to play, one must first seek to be denied. You know, what is that? There's no options in the menu prior to that point to install anything.
I remember because I had the same experience way back when Reach came out. So yeah, it hasn't changed.
Well, I think Reach may have been in one of the only parts of the game that was installed.
No way.
I don't know. Well, anyway, then it says go to the screen that it offers to take you to the screen where you can select what you download. So I obviously select the Halo 3 campaign, Halo 3 multiplayer, and Halo 2 multiplayer for me personally. And then it downloads a further 35 gigabytes. You have to have the app running while it does this. And if you Alt-Tab, you can still hear the music. That's wrong. That's wrong. That's an incorrect thing to do, but fine, I can get over that. And eventually it finishes. It downloads seemingly much slower than it did the original 35 gigabytes. I don't know whether it's connecting to a different server or something than the normal Steam download. But anyway, so I'm like, fine, okay, I can finally play Halo 3. So I go through to the campaign, click it. The content is yet to be downloaded. Would you like to manage the games you have downloaded? Why, yes, I think I fucking would, actually. So for some reason, it's only downloaded Halo 2. And the download for Halo 3 is initializing, and it initializes indefinitely. It just never, ever starts, continues to initialize for half an hour. So I look up online what I can do, and apparently you can kickstart the download by going to the Steam menu, right-clicking the game, going to Properties, the DLC, and then checking the components that you want in there. Though weirdly, this list has a bunch of different things checked, which I have not downloaded and do not want to download. Anyway, checking Halo 3 eventually gets it to download another 15 gigabytes or so, and then immediately starts a 10 gigabyte patch. And I'm not sure that those numbers are exactly right, but they are of the same order. And I have now downloaded at least 80 or 90 gigabytes of data for a game which on the disc has a footprint of 46 gigabytes. And to be clear, this is so I can play two games whose original size on their discs combined was no more than 14 gigabytes. 14 gigabytes. And I haven't even downloaded the single player portion of Halo 2. So what the fuck is going on? This is
the true meaning of Halo Infinite.
It'll just be initializing forever.
Yeah. You'll never download it.
That's how they make it last 10 years.
How is this a problem that any developer is having in 2020? I mean, they literally use Steam to deliver this baffling nightmare of a launcher. So, I mean, they obviously know that they can use Steam. Why not just use that for everything? they've solved the problem already. Anyway, I'm sure there's reasons for why they've done it.
It'll be because they want one place that they want to update, and when you download the game, it'll be downloading directly from Microsoft servers. It'll be an efficiency thing, which is not efficient.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm like that. That is almost certainly the reason, but I think it's probably a shit reason in comparison to the idea of the game working. But anyway, Halo's is still really good. Halo 3 is still really good, so it was almost worth it. Like it's showing its age in a bit how like if it feels of another era, not in any kind of way to its detriment, but just the style of shooters has sort of bifurcated in the time since it was released, and it's so single-minded in its campaign of being this sort of fairly straightforward action game, and I feel like shooters of the current moment either seem to have gravitated towards like arcade purity, the Devil Daggers school, or they've sort of become these kind of more variegated, expansively interactive games with more immersive cinematics, where you have like a mini game where you torture somebody for a while because shooters are really cool. And like Halo, aside from its cutscenes, which are actually really brief by comparison to today, it's just shooting. And that feels kind of quaint, but it's also, I mean, like, despite it being just shooting, they are expert at making that feeling pacey and interesting and constantly gripping. And yes, it's just gunning down alien monkey men pretty much, but the way it throws its monkey men into different combat scenarios is really breezy and gripping. And I don't. It's just so generous from the outset with the variety of things that it allows you to do. You have this, an arsenal and all these tools, and the combination of enemy types and the seeming sort of willfulness of the AI really makes the engagements feel just incredibly alive with possibility in a way which I think actually very few games since then have managed. Like it feels like games have also become more controlling, and I think Halo sort of was at this intersection of sort of like AI and cinema, where it's actually very freeform in the way that you deal with these combat encounters, despite being part of that sort of like emerging cinematic shooter genre. And like even in the opening level, you spill out from these what feel pretty creaky jungle environments into this open dam area with this huge facility straddling a river. And I must have over the years played that countless times, and I don't think it's ever gone the same way, like at all. Like it always feels completely different. Just the way that the grunts are arrayed and their decisions of how they flank you, where they throw down shields. I mean, the fact that the enemies have exactly the same deployables you do and use them strategically with intelligence is something that I don't think that many games achieve. And and then periodically, unexpectedly, you see this giant monkey man charging from the back ranks with a fucking gravity hammer, and he's if you don't take him out before he reaches you, he's just going to whomp you.
Yeah, I really like the clarity of the different threats. Like it's really you do this in all shooters, but particularly in Halo, you are grading threat levels all the time, and when a high threat is there, you are galvanized on that thing, and it's really clear, but it's something you've learned. It's not got like glowing red kind of arrow over the top of it that you must deal with it. Like you've learned that they are dangerous, but that dangerousness is absolutely stark. I love that about it.
Yeah, it's true. Even in fact, even in its like its set pieces, they just allow for a fairly unprecedented. No, hang on, that's not the right word. That is the precedent. That is Halo has set the precedent for freedom in those kinds of encounters. Like I don't know that there's been that many shooters between Halo 3, for example, and maybe Horizon Zero Dawn, where you are taking on just these gigantic mech beasts with the same sort of freedom that you have. And there's a I don't. Do you remember? I think it's called a scarab. Do you remember the first time you encounter a scarab?
Yeah.
You sort of rock up in this warthog, which is the cool Halo Jeep, and you sort of turn out onto this collapsed plateau overlooking a vast crater, and there's this huge, I don't know what the fuck it is, some sort of building, some sort of future building flanking you on the other side. And you sort of skid round and you take out all these enemies on bikes, and then you take out the siege vehicles, and then you're told there's this big blip on the radar heading your way, and there's this sort of brief pause, and then this gigantic quadrupedal mega tank just sort of drops out of the sky, and it's the scale of it is just fucking ridiculous. And obviously the thing you do is you drive around its legs, shooting out its knees, which you would do in any game where there's a big boss, probably, until it stumbles, and then you can clamber aboard and go inside and destroy it. But actually, you can just ramp off something in your Warthog and attempt to sort of slot yourself directly into the main deck, and then you can just go in and blow it up. And that's that's a feeling unlike anything else.
Oh no,
Is there like
something.
a level inside it?
Yeah, well, not a level, but it is. There's an environment inside it. It's a mobile building, basically.
Yeah, you can run about on top of it, and but no, there is a moment that is kind of more than that later in the game. It's maybe a bit spoilery, but this is an old game. I'm going to say it. When you get two of the fucking things.
Oh yeah.
So basically, you have this one thing, and you think, "Oh, this is kind of set piecey." Like it was cool. It was really good. I enjoyed that. That was amazing. But they just set it up just for this. But then and everything was kind of sort of twiddled for you. And then you get two of them you got to take down. And I remember feeling the first time like, how the fuck am I meant to do this? And you figure it out, and that was one hell of a feeling. And you can learn once you know how to do it. Once you've learned a way of doing it, you can dispatch them so quick. With skill and knowledge, this game becomes something else.
The flood is still shit, of course, but what can you do? But by the same token, the gravity hammer is probably the most enjoyable weapon in all of gaming.
The bonky stick,
wow,
I believe, is what we called it.
This is a remaster you're playing, right?
Yeah.
No, this is. I mean, they haven't remastered Halo 3. I can't remember which games they've remastered. I think they've only remastered.
Oh, really? It hasn't
Halo
got all sort of super. It hasn't got all super graphics. Super textures and things. Super graphics. Has it got the super graphics?
Where's the super graphics?
I don't think so.
Because
maybe
Reach was
that.
definitely like up-resed, and it looked nice.
Oh right. Well, maybe that's true. Maybe they have used they haven't redone the textures like they have in Halo 1. They've actually completely kind of redone the textures for Halo 1.
Yeah.
So maybe they have used higher resolution textures for this, but I don't. Yeah, that would maybe explain the number of gigabytes.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Were we right? We gave this a 10 on Edge, and we kept putting it like either at the number 1 or like really high end of year lists and best games of whenever.
Yeah, I think we were, but not because of the campaign specifically, although I think that's very good.
It was a strong backup, contributing factor, but yeah.
I think just the entire package is just astonishing at that time, and set a standard for multiplayer. The way just the entire infrastructure of it has been copied.
I think the Halo 3 thing was Forge, yeah.
Yeah. The
design mode where you could just create your own design, your own multiplayer matches with amazing breadth, your own stages, sort of designing land and things. It's amazing. And I believe some of those levels, am I right in thinking that if you used the same account that you used way back on 360 days, you will get your old Forge worlds?
I have no idea, because Microsoft have destroyed my old account for some reason. In some period of migrating account credentials or matching account credentials between Windows and Xbox logins and my email, they've just decided that my original Xbox login doesn't exist anymore and have given me a crappy generic name that they've generated. Very sad about that.
I am when I played Reach, some things did come through from my old Reach account. So I should probably have a look at Halo 3 just to see what stupid stuff I'd done back in 2010, whatever it was, 10 years ago. Oh, I'm glad to hear that, though.
We should play it.
We should.
Shouldn't I?
We should.
You can get the sword of Dobber out.
The sword
I can
of
get
Dobber.
the bonky stick.
That was what it was. Yeah, the sword of Dobber and the bonky stick.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. God. These are nostalgic. This is a nostalgic kind of fug that I've got myself into now.
What else have you been playing, Tom?
I have been playing Ghost of Tsushima, which is Tom S. talked about a bit before. It's not on PC currently. Don't know if it ever will, but it is good. I like it. I think Tom S. said it was a great 7 out of 10 game. I'd go higher than 7 out of 10, actually.
Ooh.
I've finished it now, the main campaign. I've cleared every outpost. I've hit max level. I've got every skill in the game. I'm not going to 100% it. I'm nowhere near that, but definitely got my money's and time's worth out of it. Actually, it's not too huge coming from Assassin's Creed Odyssey, which is I've played for like hundreds of hours and I'm 20% of the way through, maybe. This is much more manageable. And so it's a samurai game. It's about the Mongol invasion of this island called Tsushima, which is the first place they hit. And if they get through that, they're going to get to mainland Japan. And also you live there, so you don't want them to destroy it. And the main thread, it's such a, I don't know if it's like the perfect story arc for me or the worst story arc for me, but it's, you're an honorable samurai and you believe in, fighting fair and square and facing up to people. But the arc of your character in the game is basically realizing like, but wait, stealth kills are super cool. Like once you can do those, that's badass. You just get to murder people with no consequences. And obviously it's a desperate time. And so you can you have like a thief friend who's luring you into, like at the start of the game, to give you a sense of where you start as a character, you're like shocked and appalled that she wants you to climb on a roof. Like, what? Climb on a roof like a thief? And then, 4 hours later, you're sort of mass poisoning people, setting fire to them. Like, oh, this is fine, actually. That arc is, obviously I am, and it's an open world game, and like a lot of these, you have a choice of how you tackle things. And of course, I am always going to go the maximum stealth approach where I silently murder everybody and never get detected if I humanly can. And so my arc in this game is like 5 minutes after I was furiously resisting climbing on a rooftop. I'm only ever stealth killing people, never face anybody. And it completely contradicts what you're saying in the plot, because you're saying like, well, these desperate times we have to sneak around, and sometimes we must do the dirty, sneaky thing. And actually, I'm choosing to at every possible opportunity. I think the reason I like it a lot is mostly to do with stealth mechanics and also the other mechanics. So just the mechanics, really. But so stealth is really generous. It's really forgiving. It's got the usual stealth indicator stuff where you get to see that somebody's seeing you and you see how close they are to seeing you, and there's grass that makes you completely invisible and all that. But also when they do see you all the time that the awareness is going up, it's in slow motion, so you've got plenty of time to try and deal with it that way. And then when they do see you, they will say something and run over to you, and then even if you can't take them out quietly, then you just have a full-on fight with them. That doesn't necessarily sound the alarm for the whole base. Like in something like Far Cry, as soon as an enemy who's seen you says anything, like the whole base is on alert irrevocably. Here it's actually just kind of, there must be some kind of radius going on. Like if there's someone within a few meters of them, they'll hear them yell, but no one else will. If you just, sometimes you can take out like 3 guys in a big sword fight and no one else in the camp heard it, and you can just go back to stealth. And that's a huge help. It just makes stealth much more inviting. Like obviously if you want the challenge of pure stealth puzzle to solve, then this doesn't check that box in the same way. But actually I think even though stealth is my entire focus and that's all I care about, I prefer a system where if I fuck up, just let me deal with this fuck up and then go back to being in stealth and then solve the rest of the base in a stealthy way. Because the alternative to that is not that once the fight breaks out, I think the game designers permanent delusion is that they all think that, well, it's going to be cool because you break stealth and then you have to improvise and think on your feet and invent solutions on the fly to deal with this huge flood of enemies in an all-out action sequence. And who's that Twitter account that does really slick combat gifs of mostly
Sunny
PlayStation
Legend.
games?
Sunny Legend, yeah.
Like that guy is doing that. Nobody else is doing that. Like, it's once the fight breaks out, it's panic mode. You can't think on your feet. You can't remember what abilities you have. You have like 16 different modes of attack in this game, and you're never gonna remember which ones are useful here. And so while there theoretically is a cool way out of it, it would just suck if the whole base was attacking you at that point. I much prefer that you just get to go back to stealth, and then maybe another fight will break out, and I'll solve that in a cool way. And it just gives you so many, outside of stealth, it gives you so many ways to deal with the situation elegantly. Even if a sword fight does break out, if this is a game with guns, you're going to get shot like 3 times, even if you do it pretty well. And that just feels crap. You just think, oh, I just failed. I just fucked it up. Whereas in this, when a sword fight breaks out, it can be reasonably challenging. I mean, I'm playing on easy, so it's not, it's less challenging than it would be. But it's not at all unfeasible for me to take out 3 people without taking a single hit, and it'll look cool when I do it. And that, I don't want to get into fights like that, but when I do, sometimes I come out of it completely clean, and that feels great. And then I go back to stealth, and I get to take out the whole rest of the base that way. And if there is such a thing as a base-wide alarm, and it's when they parp their horns. Everyone has a horn, and if they're not like immediately going to attack you, they will attempt to parp. But even then, like, the first part of the parp is not an alarm. Like, it's a loud horn, and the whole rest of the base, I guess, technically is hearing it. But unless they finish the full parp, they're like, that's just Jeff. He's just worried over nothing. If he was in real trouble, he would have done a full parp. So, even when that happens, that's still not, Far Cry judges you for that. That's an alarm. And if an alarm goes off when you're taking out an outpost, there's no longer any finesse reward you can possibly get for doing that outpost. You'll just get the basic reward, and you've missed out on 2 different finesse rewards you could have got. This doesn't judge you on that, and I thought I liked being judged on that, because I do get a lot of satisfaction from doing Far Cry outposts undetected. But actually, when you take that away, like I said, it just makes me so much more okay with a sort of slightly shonky playthrough where I made some mistakes, but those mistakes just flow into recoveries, and then I take out the rest of the base in a stealthy way and feel good about it. And the alternative to that is that I reload a save game, right? I just go back to the last checkpoint. That's what I do in Far Cry. That's what I did in The Last of Us. Ultimately, if failing stealth spills out into a messy thing, then I'm going to load an early save game, which is I still get to do it the stealthy way. You haven't successfully punished me, really. I'm just having to repeat some of the stealth, which is not that much fun. And a reload is like, it's time travel. You're completely breaking the thread of your story of how you're playing, and those experiences become disjointed, and it sort of reduces your immersion. If it's wherever possible, it's way better to have it all flow as one sort of long thing. Some of my screw ups are less elegant. I struggle with the controls a little bit because there's just a lot to remember, and so there is. And I'm an idiot for ever trying it, but there is a way to manually, stylishly put away your sword. If you swipe, I can't even tell you right now which one it is, either left or right on the touchpad, you sort of put your sword away with a flourish, like you shake the blood off it and then slide it away. But sliding in the other direction plays your flute. So if I take out like 3 enemies in a really cool way, and it's just like total badass, proper samurai movie scene where I did everything perfectly, perfect dodges, slow-mo, counters, everybody dies, and I just whip out a flute and go.
Seems very apt.
And then the other one is that the button for photo mode is it's either D-pad left or right, and the button for loudly whistle for your horse is the other one of those things. And so a bunch of times I've been like sneaking through the bushes thinking, man, this looks really cool. I want a screenshot of this. Try and do a photo mode and then just loudly whistle. And then all of the Mongols hear that. They all look at me, and then also a horse rocks up and rides into the grass to exactly where I am. Like, dude, not now, not now.
That's a full part moment. You've got your.
It looks quite a pretty game as well.
Oh yeah, it's gorgeous.
Have you been playing it in the black and white mode?
No, I think that would be a mistake. I've heard that is not done with any particular artistry. Like there's a film grain effect and stuff, but ultimately, if you're actually making a black and white movie, there's a bunch of things you do to make colors kind of come out differently in terms of the shades they translate to, that this game is apparently not doing. I haven't even tried it because the whole joy of it is the colors. Like it's so every area has its own color grading, and it's a beautiful. There's a forest that's just kind of all gold. All the leaves are just brilliant gold, and it's carpeted with those leaves. And even all the way through, pretty much until almost the very end, you're discovering like striking new areas that have their own feel and vibe to it. It's a really open world that just like feels packed full of beautiful, distinct areas. And I'm coming to it after Far Cry 5, which I kind of revisited recently. No, sorry, not 5, New Dawn, the sort of spin-off of Far Cry 5. And I think the reason I don't like that game as much as I should, given how much I like the systems, is that the world is just kind of nothingy. It's just a bit of America. Technically, it's post-apocalyptic, but all that means is some of the trees are brown and some of the deers are pink. I will say that Tsushima its missions are not really up to scratch. Like some of them are good in terms of I like some of the characters, and I was interested to hear their stories and stuff, and some of the writing is pretty good. But the actual like mission scripting feels like it's from about 10 to 15 years ago. It feels like the early Assassin's Creed games where you get those missions to tail somebody and then they fail you for getting too far from the target, even though you can clearly see the target. I had one that I failed because I was supposed to follow the woman, and I got on my horse to follow the woman like a bit late, and it says, "You're losing the woman, 10 seconds to failure." And so I galloped. You can make your horse basically horse sprint. Galloped after her, but because she's an NPC who's like, I guess she's flagged as your companion. She matches her speed to yours. So when I gallop to catch up with her, she accelerates to the exact same speed. So I cannot close the distance. And literally, I just gallop after her for 10 full seconds. There is no way to get an inch closer to her, and then it fails the mission. It's like, Jesus Christ. And there's a bunch of stuff like that. It just feels like, forced stealth sections, like this place, for this particular mission, if you get seen ever, we instantly fail the mission. All of the cutscenes are unskippable, which sucks.
Oh, wow.
NPCs, if you get too far ahead of them, when you know where you're going, they stop because then you're not close to them, and then they yell at you to hurry up when you're actually further ahead than they are. So apparently it's made by a team of like 100 people, which is very, very small for a game of this size. So I think that's probably where it shows, is just that they don't have like the institutional knowledge that a juggernaut like Ubisoft has at this point. Like Ubisoft used to be really bad at this, and they got much better in the last like 10-ish years.
I would play it if I had a PS4, but I have to make do with Horizon, which is coming out.
Oh yeah,
tomorrow.
That's better. Horizon's better.
Have you been? I know you've come to this podcast swollen with takes, Tom. Are there any more takes that you wish to squeeze off?
If the world can take it, I do have one more. Just a quick one with Hades, because that is a game that I played. It's an early access still. I played it a long time ago, like more than a year ago, I think, and liked it at times, but got very frustrated every time I died, and I was addicted to it, but it was making me so angry when I died, I had to uninstall it. Like I had to force myself to uninstall it. Like I want to play it again, but I know now it's not healthy for me, and I need to uninstall it. And I wanted to go back to it when it was finished, because, in large part, because in the meantime they've announced a God mode, which is like an easy mode. It doesn't make you invincible, but it's their take on just making the game easier. And I was going to wait for 1.0, but then folks in our Discord would just talk about this game all the time, and I was starting to feel like I wanted to be in on that conversation. So, and it's close to 1.0. There's a date for it. I can't remember when it is exactly, but like within a month, I think. And so I figured it's not going to change dramatically before then. Might as well jump in now. And the God mode is weird. It does help, but there's some strange decisions about how it works. So it's just 20% less damage you take. So That's across the board, all damage types, and it doesn't affect anything else. So enemies are still just as aggressive. All the timing windows for dodging things, everything are exactly the same. The amount of damage you do is exactly the same, which is good because the hope for a mode like this is it teaches you to play the game properly, and then eventually you could graduate out of it and play the real game. And it helped with me, definitely. I just started to get further and see more of the game, which is what I wanted out of it. Like, I don't want to just be stuck in World 1 forever because I suck at it. But then the strange thing about it is every single time you die, that damage resistance goes up by 2%. And 2% is small enough that if you're really struggling, like if 20% is just not enough for you, that's kind of a slow rate of it getting easier. Like if you play with 20% damage resistance and it's way, way too hard, what you want to do is bump it up to like 40% damage resistance, or 30 at least, in order to actually feel a difference. So you can't do that. And then you also can't stop it. Like, it just keeps on going up no matter how well you do, unless you literally win the entire run, which is quite a feat in this game. I'm getting to the final world now, to just before the final boss, and dying then. And when I die then, it increases the damage resistance. I'm like, no, I'm doing well now. Like, this is about my comfort level. I don't want it to get any easier. And it's like the parenting technique of, like, you catch your kids smoking and then you force them to finish the pack of cigarettes, like, on the spot. Like, oh, you like cigarettes? Fucking smoke them all. Oh, you want the game easier? We'll see how easy it is now. It's getting easier all the time.
If you go back to the normal skill level, you will be shocked by just everything.
Yeah, so I don't know what my options are now, because I think I can turn God mode off, I'm pretty sure. Because the whole game, it has loads of persistence. You're unlocking things in the home base. There's a story that's unfolding in the home base. You're permanently upgrading your character. You're unlocking new weapons. I can't imagine they take that away from you if you turn God mode off. So I assume I can just turn God mode off and then just play the game as is, but with these helps in place. But I don't think I can reduce God mode. Like, what I want to do is, it's at like 44% now. I'm almost half invulnerable, and I don't need it anymore. I get through World 1 without taking a hit, usually. And so I want some God mode, but not this much God mode, and I don't really know how to do it. Like, it seems, if it was me, I think I would want it to be, you get more damage resistance if you die early, and less or none if you get quite far. If you're getting to World 4, you're fine. You don't need any more help. And for some reason, it's this very, like, insistent system that keeps on making it easier and easier, whether you like it or not.
I haven't been back to it for ages. It might be that it's a bit easier. I mean, actually, you'd know about it because God mode would have started you off not far off the normal difficulty. But I got into World 2 on normal difficulty without too much difficulty, but I'd be ground down. But I really should go back to see what else has been added. Were you surprised about anything else that's become part of the game since you played it before?
There's a gun now. They just gave him a goddamn gun. The rest of the weapons, for anyone who isn't familiar with the game, is sword and bow and spear and stuff, and then the last one is just a gun. And I remember watching the Hades documentary that NoClip have been doing. I got to see their internal discussions about this gun, and that it's so funny what game developers agonize over behind the scenes, because it's really hard, apparently, to animate somebody running and firing a gun at the same time, or maybe it's just with their system. That's an especially difficult thing. And so there was an internal debate about, like, couldn't he hover while he fires the gun? Like, all the time he's firing the gun, he's flying. And somebody else quite recently asking, I don't see what the connection is between the gun and the ability to fly. And then they're like, well, is there any precedent for the fact that Zagreus can fly? Isn't there a moment when you do this move that he kind of hovers for longer than is realistic? So technically, it's canon that he can fly. And therefore, he can fly while firing the gun, so he's easier to animate because then his legs can just drift. They didn't end up going with that. The way it works in the end is you can't move while firing, which solves it, I guess.
That's strange, because that would be similar to the bow then. Maybe you can.
Yeah. So did you use the bow?
I didn't think I'd like the bow, and I don't remember enough about it other than I remember assuming I wouldn't like it, but then I ended up, all of the weapons for me, every weapon has been my favorite weapon while I'm using it, and then the next weapon I'm kind of like, oh, I don't want to try it, and then I love that too. So that's been.
I don't get on with the bow at all. It seems like I have to charge up and wait and get the timing right in order to do about the same amount of damage I would have done just by hitting something with a spear, which I can mash as fast as I like.
I used the alternate attack for that one. There was like a sort of like a high damage one with that, and then I don't know what the hell I had going on, whatever kind of sub weapons or whatever, however it works. But yeah, like I remember that I didn't really do much charging up because the secondary attack was just insanely good.
Yeah, the secondary attack's like a spread, isn't it? You got spin and fire
Yeah,
a
that's
volley of
right.
shots in an
That's it.
arc, and I definitely preferred that because it's instant and it hits multiple targets. But I found when I tried to specialize in it, I just fell behind the damage curve, and I just got to the point where it's just taking I got to a
Right.
boss, and it was just, this is going to take me half an hour to kill this boss, even if I dodge everything, and I just had to give up. I do like, a lot of the weapons I really like. The spear just seems insane. Like, I think the spear is longer range than the gun. Like, the gun does have a limited range, its bullets just die off after a while, and the spear goes pretty much the length of the screen. It's enormous, and it's rapid fire. It hits everything it goes through. One of the upgrades for it, there are these just weapon upgrades you get that are different from the boons, but you get the Daedalus hammer, and it changes the way your attack works. And one of them is just, now there's just 3 spears. Every time you attack, you just hit with 3 spears. And I also had deflect on my normal attacks. So that means all 3 spears, they just fill the screen, and every attack they intercept gets reflected back at their owner. And it just seems crazy. Like, there's definitely huge power differentials in my builds. Like, sometimes I just get one where just nothing can touch me. And other times, like with the bow, especially in the gun, I just seem to not be able to get anywhere.
Yeah. Shall we do the questions from the questions?
I think we should. I think that's exactly what we should do, and also a clear definition of where the questions come from. Tim writes, Dear Cream and Crumble, recently I've been playing Control, and then, because it's 2020 and I have nothing better to do, watching somebody else play it on YouTube. Watching someone else navigate through the challenges I already knew fairly well made me realise just how subtle and clever the tutorialisation is in the game. A couple of particular examples stand out. Early in the game, the player gets the ability to telekinetically pull and throw objects in the environment. They're transported to the tutorial dimension to try it out. To finish the level, the player must grab a rock from the ground and throw it at a target on the wall. Later in the real world, the player has to plug giant power cables into the sides of various machines. The game doesn't have to explain this mechanic because the player has already done the task of throwing a thing at a wall. Later on, the player might find a disused lift shaft leading to a seemingly inaccessible area. If they jump straight down, they will die, but there are various ledges on the way down that provide a safe route if the player spots them. If they don't, a story mission later in the game takes the player to another lift, which is out of order for MacGuffin reasons. The player then has to jump down the much more obvious ledges and pipes to reach the bottom safely. Armed with this experience, the game assumes the player can now figure out how to get down the other lift shaft without prompting. Control shows a lot of respect for the player by presenting challenges in one context and trusting them to apply their experience to the other. Other games would rely on quest markers, waypoints, or button prompts to achieve this, but Control is smarter about it. What other games have interesting or unique tutorial mechanics? Are the days of being shouted at by an army man on an assault course gone, or is there still room for traditional tutorials in games? Yours redactedly, Tim. He also adds, P.S. Before jumping down the lift shaft, Jessie says to herself, Guess I'll have to do this the old-fashioned way. Did buildings in the olden days have massive empty vertical shafts in the middle of them before some bright spark thought to put in a lift car?
Or invent one.
Well, now this shaft makes a lot more sense.
I think they're kind of, different. I think mechanics or things you do in games that are quite prescriptive, like this is the button you use to mantle, or this is the button you use to fire your gun or reload over, they seem best suited to someone telling you because it's too boring to be kind of like hinted at. I think it's sort of more interesting mechanics that benefit from those more subtle approaches.
Yeah, there's an interesting case study of this a few years back with Cuphead, where I think it was a journalist from VentureBeat was one of the first videos of the game, I guess, was him playing the tutorial, and he gets very stuck at a certain point where I don't remember what the puzzle was exactly. He's just trying to jump over something, and his jump isn't high enough, and he's supposed to figure something out. And I think it was Zach Gage did a really interesting thread basically explaining why the tutorial failed to sort of onboard him to this. And it's because up until that point, the tutorial just told him what to do at every stage. Just do this, do this, do this. And that just puts your brain in the follow instructions mode. And then the instruction for this challenge that it was on was also sounded like a do this, just jump over this wall. But actually, it needed him to think about what he was doing and combine things he'd already learned to realize there was a trick to it. And I try and bear that in mind when making tutorials now, that the do this is a different brain mode to solve this. And once we've told you just controls and really basic stuff, we want to get into a solve this mode and also make sure the player knows they're being asked to solve this. So just go open-ended and make sure. I think I've even used the words like figure out a way to X in a tutorial. Just to make sure
tell
the player
people
knows.
to put them in the right frame of mind.
Yeah. And there's approach to tutorials I think is really cool that I've only seen in a mock-up video by James Benson, the animator, who comes up a lot on this podcast, actually, who he was doing a sort of pitch video for a game about capsule colliders. Capsule colliders are like what most video game protagonists are underneath, like secretly. It's just a very convenient way to simplify the collision on something. And his idea for a game was like, well, if this is how they work underneath anyway, why don't we make it look like capsule colliders as well? So everyone's just basically big upright pills. And because he's an animator, he can make those do amazing things and squish and slice in two and all this other stuff. But when he mocked up what the tutorial for this game would look like, you're in a crowd of these things in an obstacle course. And as you are facing the obstacle, all these other capsules are slamming into it and bouncing over it and getting crushed, or basically all of them are either failing the tutorial or succeeding the tutorial. And so most of them fail. Like, you can see what they're doing wrong, and then every now and then one of them does it right and successfully jumps over the hoop or squats under the bar, or realizes how to walk across this tightrope thing. And I haven't played this because it's a non-interactive mock-up, but it seems like a really good direction to go, because you don't feel like you're being told what to do. It feels like your insight to observe, like, oh, look, that's what works. I should do that. Even though it's still completely didactic, there's one thing to do, and the game is basically telling you to do it. Telling them in this way just feels a lot more sort of organic and player-driven, and I really like that.
Yeah, it's really nice.
Warren writes, Dear Creating Crowbar, I've recently been enjoying Thousand Threads, an aesthetically striking game about doing favours and resolving disputes among dynamic, AI-controlled NPCs in pretty forests and plains, while occasionally luring wild predators to attack thieves in order to recover stolen goods, or desperately murdering robbers who got angry that you stopped them from robbing someone else and covering up the evidence. I was surprised to see it described on Twitter by a few folks as a Strand game. And there seems to be conflicting ideas about what this means. It seems it originally meant asynchronous multiplayer elements through which players could assist one another, a la Death Stranding. But it appears to be broadening to mean game where you deliver mail and otherwise mediate other characters' interactions. I'm not sure what to make of this genre label, and so I turn to you. What is a Strand game, and what value does the label have for discussing games? Warren, P.S. Thousand Threads really is a lovely.
A lovely. I think that a strand is something that one can only come to after having fallen out of a tree and being attacked by 10 bees at once.
That
was a reference.
That was the news.
Yeah,
We missed that.
Was the news. That was yesterday. What could have been news?
It was just that one headline phrased it as Hideo Kojima was attacked by 10 bees before becoming a game designer, which seemed to establish a causal link, as if...
Yeah, I think that was and I think that that's what I'm trying to say. Yeah, like Strand.
I mean, isn't it possible that somebody was saying this is a Strand game as a pun because it's called Thousand Threads?
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. Otherwise, please don't make Strand games a thing.
I mean, my impression of the discourse was that it's something Kojima said, and everyone's being slightly mocking about it when they talk about it, like he's declared he's invented a genre, and we're all like, oh yeah, there's Strand games now, is there? I mean, so there isn't any asynchronous multiplayer stuff in Thousand Strands, certainly as far as I've seen. And
Thousand
the genre,
Threads.
I mean, oh god, yeah, damn it, it is a Strand game. it is about laboriously trekking, and so that's a common thread, if you will. But to be honest, the main thing I want to say is that he reminded me that you can throw bait at near things just to encourage predators to attack them. And that's a plausible deniability way of taking out your enemies. And that's a genre we need to explore more.
No more thoughts on this?
You've wrung me dry.
Well, in that case, those are all the questions that we have time for on this particular episode of the Crate and Crowbar. If you'd like to send us more questions, you can do so at questions@crateandcrowbar.com, or you can tweet us at Crate and Crowbar. All these recordings are uploaded as videos to YouTube, where you can find other things by us. The address for that is youtube.com/Crate and Crowbar. Thanks to our lovely Patreon backers. You can back us as well at patreon.com/Crate and Crowbar, or you can simply join our wonderful Discord community. They're all excellent people, the link for which is on our website, crateandcrowbar.com. That's the entire podcast. I'm Marsh Davis.
I'm Alex Wiltshire.
I'm John Francis.
Thanks.
Thanks, everybody.
Everybody.
Bye.